Hormozi is one terrific dude, and I'm really thankful that I first met him back in 2018 in a private mastermind in LA. Now, back then, I was running a coaching company that I sold just a bit over a year ago now, and when I went over to Alex's place and to record what I've got for you in this episode, I wanted to cover what really mattered, like really, what really mattered when it actually comes to building a successful business today. And that's exactly what we're going to be covering in this episode for you. What's the belief you want to break in people so they can achieve more in business?
So in the opening page of my book, I have two quotes. One of them is that we question all of our beliefs except for those that we truly believe, and those we never question at all. And so it's hard because every day I find one and I'm like, I didn't know this was a belief I had. I thought this was, because beliefs are truth to you. You don't think of them as beliefs. Everything you think is a belief is like, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat. Like, those are beliefs, so they're not really beliefs. But the core things that you have about your identity, about the stories you tell yourself, those are the real beliefs, and it's hard to find them. I'm trying to think, like, what is the process of being discerning and realizing that all of these things are make-believe rules? It's really hard. It's not a linear process. I think it comes to you in non-linear ways.
What does success feel like to you?
I'd say, like, between Layla and I, there's such a stark contrast, because I think that Layla is like one of the most like mentally healthy people out there, and I don't think I would necessarily consider myself that. I think that the drive comes from like a darker place. I think I was referencing that earlier. So in terms of like, what does success feel like for me? A lot of times it's like an absence of pain. For me specifically, is that like I don't have this overwhelming pain, and so like I'm okay. It's more like an exhale for me. I know that they did a study on like Olympic champions and like world-class like athletes, and usually when they win, they feel relief. They don't feel happy, and I feel like that's something that I can 100% relate to. I'm not saying I'm a world-class athlete, but I'm just saying like that's a feeling that resonates with me. I would like it to be knowing that I did my best. I would like that to be my definition of success, but I have enough negativity in me to be like, well, sometimes your best is not enough.
What are the commonalities with the people that you see that are successful to the ones that get by?
Self-awareness and drive. So an ability to understand who you are, what your strengths are, how to interact with others, and motivation to do something. And those are really the two things. Because if you understand how people work, then you'll understand how to market, you'll understand how to sell, you'll understand how to manage, you'll understand how to lead, or you'll be able to have a baseline that's significant enough. You don't have mental health issues, you don't have crazy things that you need to overcome. Because like most people are in that bucket. They've got things they haven't dealt with. And so they can't even possibly approach their business because they can't even think straight for more than an hour a day. And so their level of productivity, even when putting 100% effort in, is this big. Because their perception of what 100% effort is really small too. They don't even have the ability to work. They haven't even acquired the skill of being able to sit down for 12 hours and work. So clean personal life, having the self-awareness to be able to deal with others, and then having the drive to actually do what you want.
How do you help people proceed through working into the process, even though they can't see the full journey?
So an analogy that I heard that I think that tells the story really well is that a lot of people will start something and then change gears, and start and then change gears, and start and then change gears. They never even fully acquire skills. They never fully commit themselves. They're always dabbling because they think that if they find the right thing, they'll be successful, when in fact you can be successful at any of them if you go deep enough and you stay in it long enough. And so it's counter, which is why most people aren't successful. Because it takes discipline, it takes being bored and being able to get incremental returns rather than outsized returns. And it's those boring 1% that over time then look outrageous to people, and they say, how are you so jacked? And you're like, well, I've done this for 17 years and I haven't missed a workout. And you're like, oh, it's like, well then, and then they're disheartened because they're like, well, I could never do that, right? And so the Japanese bamboo story is just that there's like a wise farmer and a foolish farmer, and the foolish farmer plants the seed. he buries it, and a year later, there's no sprouts, so he digs it up and goes to another location, and then he plants it again, waters it, nothing, does it again. Next year, he does this cycle over and over again. And then the wise farmer plants the seed and just keeps watering it for years. And then on the 5th year, it shoots up, 80 feet in 6 weeks. And it's because during the first 5 years, it was building the foundation under the ground so that it could support the growth. And I think that very much, it's like the perfect analogy for entrepreneurship, because most entrepreneurs do have some sort of explosive moment, but it's because of the skill stack that it took them to get across the bridge. And so once they get that last piece, then the first dollar flows, and then it kind of it opens up. And so it's like, well, I know how to write copy, I know how to sell. It's like, okay, but you don't know how to make creative, you don't know how to make landing pages, and you don't know how to close over the phone. So it's like, there's always a missing link, but it's like once you know how to go from an eyeball to a dollar, end to end, every single piece, then at that point you've completed the bridge, and then it'll seem like it's your friends and family will be like, oh my God, it's overnight, and you'll be the only one who knows that it took you 3 years of consuming all these courses, not making any money, so that you could finally make your first.
What excites you with the health and fitness world now?
I can probably talk more towards where I think the trends are going.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think health and fitness is going to always move towards personalization and on demand. And so just like Netflix has a personalized experience, it's on demand. And so I think fitness is going to go in that direction. I think that there will be some people who prefer to have some sort of in-person presence, and there will be other people who I think the marketplace as a whole is going to grow. Like Peloton and things like that are coming out that are allowing people who probably wouldn't work out because it is convenient enough for them. So they're actually creating they're expanding the pie itself. There were traditional gym goers, and now there's group workout goers, and then there's stay-at-home people, and so there's these different segments that are growing. But I think technology is allowing business owners to provide more value to end consumers in ways that they couldn't do before, and create more personalized experiences at scale. And so I think at the end of the day, the perfect fitness business would have an entirely one-on-one experience that could be done at scale. And that's ultimately on demand. So it's if you want a personal training session right now that's catered to you, your body type, your demands, your goals, immediately at your home with all of everything you need there. That's if you think about that is what ideal is. And so I think that we're actually we're really moving towards that direction. And once virtual reality kicks in, and there's going to be some pretty cool things that come out. So that's where I think fitness is going. And it'll just be, I'll be excited to be along for the ride to adapt and grow when those things come around.
Have you subscribed? If not, this is the best time for you to subscribe, whether you're on the YouTube or on the podcast. Why? Because it would be a bummer if you missed out on everything that's to come, or don't subscribe if you're not actually getting much value out of this, because there is a zillion other things that you could be doing. So I'd rather you go and do that. The ball's in your court.
What are people doing, gym owners, personal trainers, coaches, even the weekend warriors, when they're trying to have a crack at this stuff? What do you think they're trying to do that doesn't work these days?
I think they're trying to be scalable before scale is required. So somebody who's more advanced than me in business recently I was on the phone with, he was a CEO, he had 4 or 5 exits and had done really well. And he was like, don't be cute. And I just really liked that, because I think I'd heard that years ago, but it was a great phrase to hear again. And I think a lot of times the people who are getting in, weekend warriors, whatever, they're trying to be cute, when it's really just it's rolling up your sleeves, it's texting your clients every day, and it's 100% it's a relationship-based business. And so they're trying to get cute, trying to get fancy, trying to reinvent, I have a unique process. And no, you don't. No, you don't. The body hasn't changed. No, you don't. And so, but what you can be unique and special at is being you. And that is going to attract people who are just like you, as long as you're just being true to who you are. And being okay with that, not necessarily trying to attract everyone, but attracting the people that are going to become your tribe. And that'll only be true if you're being true. And I think that if people stop trying to make something that's they're just trying to get really fancy with it when it's really just doing the boring stuff of like writing handwritten cards, sending them surprise gifts, and it's actually just giving a shit. And so I think I had a podcast a long time ago that our company talks about sometimes, and it's like the best way to get people to think that you care is to just care, and that's really what it is. You know what I mean? And I think that's where the people who are trying to do something is like they're trying to posture themselves like I'm a fitness entrepreneur. I'm a like it's okay to be where you're at. You know what I mean? Like you don't need to be a 25-year-old millionaire. Like I think it's like kids in high school right now. I think 50%. Our neighbor was telling us this because they've got kids that are in high school. It's like 50% of them think they're going to be millionaires by the time they're 25. And so, and then they're heartbroken by the fact that and so they start trying to make stupid moves because they're like, how do I close this gap? It can only hit a grand slam. That's the only way to do it. When in reality, it's just a lot of singles. You know what I mean? It's a lot of base hits. It's a lot of like blocking and tackling and just like chopping wood one step at a time. And so I think what the people who are trying to succeed, who aren't succeeding, are doing is they're not willing to eat shit for long enough and get so good at the one thing that like instead of learning all these other skills, like the first skill that you should learn is the thing that you're trying to deliver, is your service skill. And until you have a full roster of clients without marketing, then you are not good enough to try and learn the other skills. Like if you are good enough at this one thing, you will have a full roster. And so that is where all of your attention should go. And then once you have a full roster, you can raise your prices, and then it gets full again, then you raise your prices, and you keep doing that. And then at that point, then learning the additional skills of like, okay, how do I hire staff? How do I promote more? How do I scale? Like then those other skills become important to learn. But like most people try and skip first step, and they have a terrible product, and it's the bamboo tree that has no roots. And so they continue to fail over and over again because the baseline just isn't that good. The food at the restaurant, despite all of the promotions, all of the whatever, when people have their first bite, they just don't want to come back. And most people who are mediocre, because most people are mediocre, that's why it's mediocre, is they're just not that good. They're okay. And it's just that the difference between okay, going from shitty to okay, let's say in terms of unit of effort, might be 1 unit of effort, but going from mediocre to good is probably like 5 units of effort, and going from good to great is probably another 5 units of effort. And so there's standard deviations in terms of like how much effort is required. And most people just assume I only had to read a few articles to understand more than the average person. Cool. But to be excellent and to leave people in awe so that after they experience your service, they can't help but talk about you because you are remarkable. People want to make remarks about you. Until you're at that point, it doesn't make sense to learn the other skills because the base isn't there.
Okay, explain skill stacking. I think this is perfect.
The difference between where you are and where you want to be comes to simply a number of skills that you do not have. And stacking skills together creates a disproportionate return on the stack of skills before it. So for example, if you are good at math, that is a baseline skill. It's not really monetizable, but it's good. Once you start learning how to like keep someone's books, now you're a bookkeeper, that is a monetizable skill. You can make a living, you won't go hungry. After that, you become a CPA and you're a certified accountant. Like, okay, now this is more valuable. Then you learn about tax strategy and ways to shelter money and all this kind of stuff. That becomes far more valuable. And then you learn about insurance and how you can use that to diversify risk, also decrease tax, also have different vehicles for protecting a business. And then you learn about financing and investment banks and like doing fundraising and things like that for a company. And if you're thinking about this as I'm going through this, you probably have a picture in your mind of what type of person each of these people are. And you can see the amount of money that person makes going like this, right? And it's the last 1, 2, 3 skills that stack together at the top that create the disproportionate return at the end. And so I think what's interesting is that when it comes to like making money, a lot of times we're like, I want to make money, but making money is a large bucket for a number of skills. And so a lot of times you can think about it like a bridge from one side of the, cat ravine or whatever to the other, is that like they buy a course on copywriting and they're like, it says if I buy this course on copywriting, I'll make money, and they don't. And then I buy this course on buying traffic and I don't make money. And then I buy this course on writing headlines and I don't make money. I buy this course on sales and I don't make money. And it's only until you can have an unaltered flow in sequence that the first dollar comes across. But then once the first dollar comes across, the next one comes right after. And so understanding what skill deficit you have is the single greatest skill that I believe that you can acquire. So like if you want to, like if you see someone who succeeded faster than you, they're given the same resources of time. And it means that they were able to use discernment to prioritize where they were going to allocate their attention to acquire the best ROI skill for the next one in logical sequence. One of the questions that I get a lot is like, okay, how do I know what skill to do next, right? And the problem is, so the absolute way that you have to do this and approach this is that it's absolute responsibility. And so if you are not making the amount of money that you want to make, if you are not growing at the rate that you want to grow, it's because you lack a skill. And so if I ever hear someone say like, there just are no good salespeople, there just are no good managers, I'm like, do you really believe on earth there are no good salespeople? No, of course not. You lack the skill to recruit, hire, manage, and promote salespeople. And so there's 4 skills that you need to acquire to get your first salesperson. Then when you have multiple of them and you're like, man, but my sales are uneven. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. I can't keep it. Then you lack the skill of managing a sales team. And so if you always phrase it like that, it's always your fault, but it's always under your control. And so that way you can use your discernment to try and figure out, okay, what of these skills is the one that I need to focus on? The rule of thumb that I've always used in terms of like what next is, if I have, the easiest way to do it from a tactical standpoint is to look at your day. We do time studies a lot, and look at what are all the things that I'm doing, and you can see which of these things are the highest value. You should be replacing the things that are the lowest value skills and giving those to people who can mimic those lower value skills, and then refill your time up with the high value skills. One of the mistakes I see is that people try and buy their time back, but they don't fill the time that they bought back with money generating activities, and then they wonder why they're not making anything. It only makes sense to delegate when you should still always be working. And that's kind of and that's a little bit of a belief in terms of like, well, I want to have the laptop lifestyle. It doesn't exist for anyone. It doesn't exist. And so, and the people who are telling you that are just trying to sell you something.
100%.
And so that's kind of the easy short view on like skill acquisition. Is like the only reason that you aren't where you want to be is because you lack not one, but a number of skills that have to be acquired in sequence to get you from point A to point B. And then once you're at point B, there's another set of skills that you need to get to point C, and learning which one in what order is the right one to acquire next is the next step for you. And then also understanding that some skills like leadership don't immediately make you money, but are 100% required to not only make you money, but sustain the level of effort or money that you've acquired.
What's the highest high?
Highest high. I do think that the highest high, and it's not to share it, to grab it from Layla's, but the highest high was after we had gone through that whole period of shit. And it might be because we had just gone through that period. But when we, after all of that, had our first 100,000 in the account from the new business, and I saw no hair on it. You know what I mean? Like there wasn't like, I have this, but I'm still beholden to all of these things that I don't, you know what I mean? It was like a clean, real $100,000 that had no strings on it. And I knew that it was going to just like propel up. And that's when it was like the hope and the possibility became real that it could happen. And I think that it's usually that moment where like you realize that your hope could happen is like, that's, I think the moment where it's the highest high. It's not actually like the full realization, because when you're like, I want to squat 405. In order to squat 405, it seems amazing when you squat 315. But when you squat 395, which is what you'd probably be strong enough before you hit 405, it's not that big of a deal because you've done all the things beforehand. And so I think it's really, once you have the realization, like when you're lifting and you have your first periodized program and you hit your first PRs, you're like, I can use this to get to here. I think that's usually when you have the realization that that big goal is achievable with a process. So I think that was why that was the biggest high.
Brilliant answer. What do you want someone to do after being with you?
Gym launch?
Yeah. I want both. After witnessing you right now and gym launch.
Oh. I want people to embrace the boring work. And so that is one of our 6 core tenets at Gym Launch, is do the boring work, is that repetition is what creates mastery. And, you know, we got a reputation for being good at sales, and I pulled up on a whim my account on MindBody, and I had 4,000 confirmed closes, and it was over years. And so people were like, well, how are you so good? It's like, well, I did it a lot of times, and I had a lot of people say no to me. You know what I mean? And so it was just really hard, you know what I mean, for a period of time. And I think just being able to embrace, like, if you actively make the goals to be rejected, then you feel like you are succeeding when you are failing, because you are. And one of my favorite, not that I'm, you know, but there's a proverb that's, in all labor there is profit. And so the way that I see that is that your work works on you more than you work on it. And so as you work, you become better. The outcome of your work is irrelevant for the majority of your life. When you're in school, you don't remember anything from the first 12 years of your life. But the hope is that if you worked, you would acquire skills like how to learn, right? How to deal with others. And because that is what your work is actually working on you for. And so when you're selling and failing, understand that you're acquiring the skill of sales, and you're just digging and keep, like, you're still chopping down the tree and doing the boring work. And so if there's anything that anyone gets from any of our stuff, it's just being willing to fail over and over and over again, and seeing that as a part of a successful process. And really, like, it's seeing it as learning and not as failure at all.
If you've enjoyed this episode and it's vibed with you, then make sure that you hit subscribe, whether you're on the YouTube or on the podcast. And importantly, if there is any guests that you want me to have on the show, or specific questions or topics that you want me to be able to cover for you, simply put it into the YouTube comments or send me an Instagram DM. That way I can make sure you're getting the most out of actually being here.